The Experience, a tragic fairy tale by StoryMan-Jack. James winked at his wife as he laid the small paper box with a bow on the counter. "What's that?" Allison, his wife of 12 years, asked. She was tired, he knew, both of them working full-time, he himself working a second job, and she having to take care of James Jr., their 10-year-old, and Emily, their 6-year-old, after her job. "Do you remember the promise I made Jim the day he was born?" James asked his wife. Her eyes went wide. "We finally did it?" His smile widened as he nodded to his wife. "We're going finally." She chuckled. "When?" "On his birthday week." James swelled with pride at his accomplishment. "I think this is more for you than all of us," she accused, her voice sarcastic. "Oh well, if you don't want to go," he teased back. Her laugh was full-throated and came from deep within her belly. "I think we'll tag along." 12 years of working a full-time job, several odd jobs, and part-time work. The scrimping, the saving. He could have gone for a few days much sooner. After all, if they scrimped on everything, the cost would have been less than $5,000. But he wanted to take advantage of everything, give his kids a once-in-a-lifetime experience that he'd never had. So he had saved a cool $20,000, and did so while making sure their house and bills would never suffer. Alice's face grew serious at his bemusement. "To be honest, we all need this. Some time off, to rest at least." James nodded, knowing full well what she was talking about. The relief that came to him once his goal was accomplished was more than just excitement of going on the trip he'd planned for over a decade. It was the relief that he no longer had to work a meaningless part-time job. The children were excited, of course, and the weeks leading up to the beginning of their trip ratcheted up that excitement at every moment. It was the happiest and most cohesive his family had ever been. Not to mention, he no longer had to work those 2 jobs, and his wife could slow down a bit herself, with him more at home where he could help out. Things were definitely looking up. Now, the plane ride was a pain, as it always was when traveling with energetic children. The attendants rolling their eyes at every time he had to settle them back down. At one point, he ignored that attendant that had given their pre-flight safety, I guess it was a demonstration. She had stood up at the front and played with a seatbelt for half an hour or so, but he paid attention, making sure his kids were strapped in and quiet for the beginning of their journey. Once she'd even murmured, "Should throw those little monsters out the side door." "We're going to the happiest place on earth. We're going to the happiest place on earth," he murmured over and over again in his head. James just didn't even get upset when their layover flight was delayed by 6 hours. He just sighed, did his best to help Allison corral the children, and spent way too much money on food and distractions while they waited in a boring airport. They had reached the hotel and thought that their trials and tribulations were over, but the hotel was even more of a problem. He had spent the money on the largest package, but the park had overbooked, and his family had drawn the short stick. "We can offer you some food passes and attraction passes to make up for the difference," the green-haired child behind the counter told him. No, he argued. "We paid for the deluxe package, and we end up in the basic? All 4 of us sharing a single room with 1 bed? We paid for a 3-room condo." "As I said, sir," the young lady said in an argumentative and accusatory tone, "we gave the last one of those away." "And you think the price difference is only worth a few passes?" She shrugged. "Not my fault." She said again, "It's policy." James was losing his temper. The old happiest place on earth mantra wasn't working anymore. "Just give me your manager." It wasn't a question. "If you'll give me your phone number, I can have someone contact you," she replied in her lazy, uninterested tone. James, having one last rational thought, turned to his wife. Why don't you just take the kids on up to that room? I'll get this worked out. Allison just nodded at him and left the area as quickly as she could. She, more than anyone else, knew what her husband's temper was like and didn't want any part of it, at least not in public. Listen, young lady, he growled. The first thing that really caught her attention. Either you get me a manager in here right now, or you get your security people in here. He paused, settling his glare on him. It's your choice. Over an hour of arguing with the assistant manager, who also kept saying it was always someone else's fault. Where the hell did any kind of sense of responsibility come from anywhere? Lord knew that if he did something like this at his job, he'd have been fired within 2 seconds. Look, James said, while you've been standing here lying. What exactly have we lied about, sir? The pompous manager asked. Well, first you tried to claim that this package was what we purchased, knowing full well that it was not. And then you continued to insist after I showed you my paperwork, James sighed. The point is, I've been recording this entire conversation on my phone. James lowered his voice and made it sound conciliatory as he possibly could, even though it was a lie. Listen, I don't want to get anyone fired or written up. Could you please just authorize the refund for the difference? He paused and smirked, knowing that it was fake. Besides, I'm just going to end up spending this money at the park anyway. That was what did it. Once he reached the room, his demoralized family greeted him. All right, listen, we got it worked out. We've got some extra money, so we can do more stuff. We're just going to sleep in here anyway. And then they went to the Magic Kingdom portion of the park, the first spot on his trip. But James just stared and couldn't comprehend what he was seeing. His daughter was almost in tears, his son very confused, and he just stared. He'd saved for over a decade, broken promises, lied, cheated, and some would even say stole. He'd done everything he could to get his family here. After the travel, the problems, everyone's nerves shredded, here they were, all of them stunned. The actress that stood on top of the stage, her half-shaved head purple in the light, a tattoo of a skull with a wicked dagger protruding through its broken top, smiling in the blue and white dress that had once belonged to Snow White. What the fuck? He asked no one in particular. An attendant, seeing his consternation, approached. Can I help you, sir? The young man asked. James didn't even look at the man, his eyes locked on the person pretending to be what was supposed to be one of the purest characters in fairy tale land. What is that? What is what, sir? The voice sounded confused. On stage, James demanded, turning to the attendant, and then started, seeing that the man had a shaved head with a spider web tattoo all over its bald pate. Well, that's Snow White, of course. The confusion remaining on the attendant's voice. No, Snow White doesn't have tattoos, and her hair is black, her skin milky. She's supposed to be pure and innocent, not someone looking to pick up a biker after a night of raving. We no longer limit our people in their self-expression, the man said with a sneer. James grabbed the man. He couldn't help it. He had lost it. It had all cost so much money and time, even to get here. And it was all for nothing. Listen, you twit, I'm about to go full Griswold on your ass. The young man looked confused. Griswold? You don't even... James turned, then making his decision. He grabbed his family, and they left for the gate. Let's just go to Universal with what little money we have left. These people no longer understand what it is to dream, and old Walt would be so ashamed. Thank you for listening to this short story. Yes, I was making a point. Maybe I didn't make it very well. Let me know in the comments. But if you did like it, please hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed, please do so. Share out this video, and like I said, comment on my stories. They help me become a better writer. Remember, your life is your story. Make it a great one. Good night.